Hey, welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I'm Darren, I'm your host. And today I've got another great guest, Mr. Mendel. He is the CEO of the MeatStick wireless thermometer. I can't wait to talk to Mendel about how he developed the MeatStick and what's going on next with it. I'll be right back with Mendel from the MeatStick.
Smoking, grilling, getting hot and hotter. Sous vide and chilling from fire and water.
Hey all, Inkbird's been coming out with some amazing new products, and one of them is their brand new Wi-Fi Bluetooth barbecue temperature controller. So it allows you not just to monitor your temperature, the temperature of your cook from anywhere, but this one will let you actually control the temperature of your smoker, even if it's not a pellet grill. It'll work with Kamado type smokers, Weber kettle, Weber Smoky Mountain, has attachments for a couple different ones. Comes with 3 probes, 1 to monitor the pit, 2 to monitor food. You can set it manually on the unit itself or with the app using your mobile device. Check it out, guys. It's actually on sale right now on Amazon, so if you click on the link below, you can get a great deal. But check out Inkbird's Wi-Fi Bluetooth barbecue temperature controller. Back to the show. Welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I'm Darren, I'm your host, and today I've got another great guest coming on, Mr. Mendel. He is the CEO of the MeatStick wireless thermometer company, and I'm really excited to have him on. Welcome, Mendel, and why don't you tell us a little bit about where you are and what you do?
Thank you for having me, Darren. So my name is Mendel. I am in Los Angeles, and that's where we're based. And we just love, cooking and barbecuing and just, getting friends together. So we decided, the MeatStick is such a great thing to bring to the people to make cooking just so much easier and convenient for everyone.
So let me ask you a question. What did you start your career doing? Because nobody really starts a business from scratch, coming right out of college. And so, some people do, but it's very rare that they do. So what did you do before you guys decided to put the MeatStick idea together?
So actually, I was working as I was working on a smart home system beforehand. This was back around 2014. We were putting together a team to develop a full smart home system that you control your lights, control your your speakers, your just all these other devices in your home. But that was also a very crowded space, as we saw that was up and coming. So I was actually working with a team with engineers for the IoT space, and IoT is Internet of Things. So we have engineers working with product, with app, and with just all these Bluetooth chipsets that really bring the wireless system together. And from what we were seeing, the Internet of Things was just really not taking off as we wanted it to. The smart home systems, it was it was a cool thing to have, but people just didn't really want it per se.
Yeah, they weren't necessarily thinking that they needed it. It was more of a,
exactly.
If I had it, it'd be cool, but I really don't need it.
Yeah. Right. And then when you have it set up, it's cool, but just when it works, it's great. But there's so many issues with technology these days with the with wireless, with Wi-Fi, with Bluetooth at the time, that reliability was one of the hardest things to keep. And that's what was needed for a smart home system. Also that, and it's just expensive. So for me, Now,
did you study electronic engineering in school? What did you study in school to get to where you were there?
So for me, I actually studied business and actually went to law school, and I studied law. I passed the California bar.
Oh.
But I was working with my brother at the time, and he was the engineer, and he was leading the engineering efforts on that. And I was really doing everything else at the time. So
that's interesting, because you would think that you would have came from a electrical engineering background. It's like when I talked to Kenji Lopez Alt, he's a famous chef, if you probably know who he is. But he studied architecture in school and then was working at restaurants like on the side. And that's how he became a chef. As,
Yeah.
he didn't really study that in school. He didn't go to culinary school and everything. So that's
Hmm.
I like to find out where people started from. So, all right. So you were working at the smart home place, and then you decided to kind of look at other things, correct?
Yeah. So for me, I'm always hosting my friends' get-togethers at my place in Los Angeles. And one of the things I've realized when hosting people is if I'm cooking and I want to cook well, I'm occupied majority of the time. If I'm out at the grill, have some friends over for the pool, it's either the meat's good and me being occupied the entire time, or it's burning or undercooked because I'm rarely checking up on it.
Right.
Right. And, back then, at least, what do we have? There weren't any Wi-Fi products on the market, or they're just up and coming. Bluetooth was very limited. Or the big one was what we know as wireless thermometers back then is they're all wired, connecting to some hub, which they work to an extent, but also for me at least, when I'm rushed, I have countless, plates of meat. I've knocked things over. And it was just a really hassle when I was dealing with all of that.
Yeah, you're talking like the Maverick type things where
Exactly.
they're not really hooked up to your phone. They just have two separate units that use radio waves. And, those things are, I probably went through maybe 10 or so in 3 years because they don't work that well either.
I mean, again, when those work, they work great. But it's just the wires, it's hot depending on who you have around. So when you have kids around too or whatnot, they see a wire, they're going to pull on it. There's all these extra variables that ideally without the wires just make things like 10 times easier.
Right.
Right. So back then when we're actually playing with our smart home technology, one thing we realized was one of our specialty products was what I like to call the presence sensor. And what that was we're using the Bluetooth technology, it's a very technical technology, to pretty much become a beacon. And that would pretty much let your app know, let your phone know where you are and transmit certain data in a passive state. And what we really liked about that, we're thinking about it, well, this could give off our temperature as we're looking into, temperature sensors as well for the smart home technology. But I was looking at, one day I was cooking and I realized, what if we just, put this technology into a thermometer, and I would always know the temperature. But of course, the technology behind that is extremely complicated.
Yeah.
Back in around 2015, we're just playing with the idea, not really diving deep into it. We're just seeing if it was even possible, looking into the ideas behind that, and going from there.
So when you started playing around with the idea of it, did you start trying to develop some kind of prototypes or putting things together to test out the theory? Or
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the technology we had already was we pretty much had the base technology, the base algorithms, the base software. The hard part was making sure finding the electronics, the batteries that are able to survive the high heat.
Yeah.
And that was one of the hard, yeah.
And the right size too,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's finding the right size for all that to be put together. And then it's not even just, figuring out how to put it together. You need to be able to put it together on a mass scale, right? It's one thing to produce one. It's another thing to produce, 100,000.
Yeah, it's got to be cost efficient and everything because you can build one and it costs you $500 and nobody's going to buy it.
Exactly.
Now, I'm going to ask this question because a lot of people are probably asking this, and I get when I use mine and when I promote mine, I never bought the meter, and one of the reasons I never did is because I had a bad taste in my mouth from their Kickstarter. Program that they ran because they did their Kickstarter and they dragged it out for a long time. And I'm friends with Meathead Goldwyn from Amazing Ribs, and he won't even have them on their website because he ordered from them and on their block and all that kind of stuff. And he just left a bad taste in his mouth so bad from the delay and all the problems that they had. Were you developing this at the same time that the meter people were developing? I mean, did they get the idea from you? Did you guys kind of have that same idea at the same time, or?
So, I mean, I'm not sure when they came up with their idea. We were definitely playing with the idea when they announced. That did, I won't deny, reinforce us. Oh, this is a winning idea that we
Gotcha.
should play with, because we have already were playing with the idea as well. We personally, I will say, didn't really think of taking it to a product. But we do realize, where we were going is like, hey, like this is doable. I love cooking. So why not go with this? We see that it is a very hard product to produce. And I'll admit, one of the things we saw was they were taking a very long time to come out. They said, I also remember that they said they were, launching in a few months. And I think they went over a year or so without actually sending out a product, to my understanding.
It was more than the year, I think, and
Okay.
it was more like 3 years on their block on their multi
Yeah.
Wi-Fi based product. So yeah,
So I mean, for us, for playing with it, just with technology, we understand it's extremely hard, definitely extremely hard to um, give off an accurate timeline when something's produced. But it also, I guess, depends on how they're communicating, and I definitely understand. We've actually released our mini on our Kickstarter as well. I'll admit, we are delayed right now with production. We are doing an announcement. Actually, by the time this is released, we'll have done an announcement, and we'll hopefully be getting the product out soon. But I guess one thing we do have that they don't at the time is we've already created a product. We know it's going to work.
right.
We know how to make it. It's really just getting it out. And I'll say I'm already sorry for the delay that we have for our mini. Things. It is definitely a lot harder to produce something so small, than expected, and I definitely see that.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the big thing is they probably had one prototype that probably wasn't
Hmm.
even as good as they thought it was, and when it
Hmm.
came down to trying to replicate that into a big mass production,
Hmm.
they were way behind the times. And I can understand that if you're a company that is going to try to release something, but if you collected money from people on a
Hmm.
product and you drag it out for years,
Hmm.
it really leaves a bad taste in their mouth. I jumped on the Kickstarter for the mini because I knew you
Hmm.
guys already had a great product and you were
Hmm.
just pretty much taking that product and miniaturizing it some. So
Hmm.
I can expect a month or 2 or 3 for delays, but when
Hmm.
it comes down to 2 or 3 4 years when a product, I mean,
Hmm.
there was just to talk about Kickstarter programs, there was a sous vide unit that I followed that had the same
Hmm.
issues. They didn't
Hmm.
have a production unit. They had a one
Hmm.
unit, and it took them almost 3 years to actually fulfill their Kickstarter, and it
Oh,
left a
wow. Hmm.
bad taste in everybody's mouth. So,
Hmm.
I mean, did you when you first started with the meter, you didn't do a Kickstarter for the original meter, right? You
Or the meat
pretty
stick, yeah.
much, yeah, the meat stick. I'm sorry, yeah, the meat stick.
No
So
worries, no worries.
you,
No, we did not. We
so
just we launched right away. This was back
yeah,
in 2018. We were actually trying to get our product out to market before meter. But I'll agree with them. It is a hard product to produce. Right, we're trying to
yeah.
fit so much technology into a small space, without letting moisture in to a certain extent. So it's not easy. I'll give them that.
Yeah. And like I said, I think that's the big thing is when you collect money from people for a product that,
Hmm.
you know, I understand, usually I can expect 6 months to a year probably on something like this, but
Hmm.
when it goes, 2 years, 3 years,
Hmm.
and then the product's still out there, people get really, really
Yeah,
upset about that. But,
yeah.
so at least, like I said, I signed up for the mini for you
Hmm.
guys because I knew you had a product that the main meat stick worked great and I loved
Hmm.
it. So this is just something I can use on smaller stuff and I'll wait a
Hmm.
couple months for it. I'm not in a hurry for it. And
Hmm.
the money that you took from me wasn't a whole lot of money. So,
Hmm.
but,
Yeah.
and I know it's coming.
Hmm.
So when you started developing it, putting the whole thing together and getting ready to market it, there was already a
Hmm.
market. There already was buzz out there because of Meter, because they did the
Hmm.
Kickstarter.
Hmm.
What made you go with the materials that you used? They used wood and some other stuff. I mean,
Hmm.
did you look at theirs and go, I want to be a little bit different, I want people to look at ours and know that it's a differentiator between the meter?
We did decide that we decided to go for a more, I guess, a bold look as well. One of the big things, and the reason we actually chose plastic as opposed to wood, is wood harbors bacteria.
Gotcha.
And even though bamboo is, I mean, I'll admit their product looks great with the bamboo. Just being able to harbor bacteria over the long term isn't necessarily the best idea, in our way of thinking, at least. Also, it is a bit heavier, which if you're carrying it around, is just another tool that just adds more weight to anything you're doing.
And it probably costs a little bit more too. So to
That probably too
produce.
as well. Yes, that's true.
But one of the reasons I really, when I started looking at wireless, thermometers, because they, when you guys both started releasing products, they got more popular, and I kind of held off because I'm not big. I use thermometers, to some extent, but they're not I don't constantly monitor everything. I use wireless. I use, instant reads, and I use some wireless barbecue thermometers to monitor temperature, and I'll use a temperature controller for my smokers too. But the reason I really honed in on the MeatStick is because I do a lot of sous vide and barbecue mixture. That's kind of what my whole thing is. And when I saw that yours was actually 100% waterproof, or mostly 90% waterproof, or what have you, that it was safe to use in sous vide, that's where I said, okay, I can use this to monitor my food in the sous vide bath, then take it out and then use it also in the smoker to make sure that my meat doesn't go any higher than my sous vide temperature did. I saw it more of a tool where I could use it in both my methods of cooking, whereas I can't do that with anything else I have. So, and I know that the MeatStick or the meter was not really, they tell you, you really shouldn't get it wet, and you really shouldn't put it in a deep fryer and all that. So when you guys, I know this is probably on the second version, is a lot more, is a lot more rugged than the first version. Is that true?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess you could say it's more rugged to a sense. One thing we really wanted to be, we want this to be an everyday device for you to monitor whatever you're cooking. And that was our whole goal. With the original MeatStick, it was spec'd out for the barbecue market, smoking your briskets, smoking your pork shoulder, big cuts of meat. It's why we picked it to be the size it is, with the size of the battery that's included, and the components as well. One thing we realized is a lot of people, water is one of the biggest issues. We were talking with chefs, even in restaurants and whatnot. And a lot of them, especially if they're barbecuing, they would still use the wired probes because for them, it's reliable to an extent. Obvious, one big issue that they were complaining to us was they were going through, like 10 sets of wires, every year, if not more, because when you wash them, they get damaged, water gets in, and they short out.
Right.
So looking for a long-term solution with any type of, I guess, accessory, you're going to be washing this. You're going to be potentially might throw it in the dishwasher. Not to say anything about you. You might throw it in the or have it fall into,
garbage disposal.
The garbage disposal.
And your wife turns it on.
Nothing we can do about that, sadly. We're not making these out of diamonds. But anything we could do to prevent it from,
I just wanted to show you I wasn't lying. Look what happened to it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. I'm sorry we can't make the ceramic, indestructible.
No, I know.
I guess we can make these out of diamonds, but I mean, we're going to need to charge quite a bit for that. But yeah, I mean, one thing was one less thing to worry about with regards to that. And it also just made the potential use cases, skyrocket.
Exactly. And that's, like I said, that's why I really focused on the MeatStick, because I looked at it and said, well, I can use this now for just about everything that I cook, especially in the stuff that I do, because really I don't, if I can't use it in a sous vide bath and then take it and put it in the smoker, I can only use it for half my cook, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense to even worry about it. But, and I'm really looking forward to the mini, because now it just takes that same thing, but just a little bit smaller, and I can use it for smaller type things that maybe I can't, put in the full size MeatStick in as well.
Yes.
So,
yeah, so we're pretty excited about that. One thing that we've been exploring is one big difference I'll say between the meter and the MeatStick is we are a modular system, as I like to say. And what that means is you could use multiple probes with one charger.
Right.
It really cuts down on having extra chargers or having extra devices for each probe. I think with that idea, it makes controlling and using the product a lot more usable to an extent. But there are, of course, limitations with that. And one of the biggest limitations is we need to have the probes auto shut off at some point.
Right.
So we've had people, you could say, they wouldn't actually complain about that, but they realize, hey, it turned off when I, finished my brisket, threw it into the into their ice chest or cooler for the carryover cooking, and like it turned off. And I will say at this point, there's nothing we can't do anything about that with our current algorithms, but we are looking into a way to prevent this so we could use it for longer periods of time.
Now, I can say I have used it cooking sous vide for a long time, like 24 hours, and it stayed on the whole time. And even after I took it out of the sous vide bath and put it in the smoker, as long as the temperature is changing to some degree and it's reading some kind of fluctuation, it'll stay on. So, I did a pork roast, and I had it in the sous vide bath for 24 hours or so, and then put it on the smoker for another 4 or 5 hours, and it worked the whole time. Didn't shut off once. So, that's what impressed me with it. So, it just, I had no issues whatsoever. It being in the moisture in the sous vide bath and then moving over to the smoker. So,
yeah. Just a note on that. The algorithm is detecting if it's cooking, I guess you could say.
Right.
So, because you're in the sous vide, it's cooking. Once you're in the smoker, it's still cooking. So, it was all good.
And one of the things too that I really noticed, and I've seen people complain, you always, in these forums, people will complain about everything, no matter what. You could have 100% perfect product. Somebody's going to find something they don't like about it, but that the ambient temperature sometimes is off. And I found that, and you can really monitor it when you do sous vide, because your water bath is exactly whatever you set it at. So if it's 132 degrees, it's 132 degrees in the water bath. And I did that cook, and that's the first thing I noticed is what it read the exact perfect temperature on both. When it got up to the internal temperature, the meat got to the that temperature. Both the ambient and the internal probe read the same the whole time. So I had no issue with. That's how I know a probe is calibrated right, because if I got 3 different touch points and they're all reading the same, especially when it's in a sous vide bath where I know it's with water it's pretty locked in. So I know that it works well. Now when you're in a smoker and you got different variable with the air, different temperatures moving around and convection and all that, you're always going to have different readings because it is different readings everywhere in the smoker. So, but that's what really impressed me with the MeatStick is that everything was locked in. Everything was, even if it was just a half a degree off, it was, I expect that even on a sous vide circulator, I expect a half a degree difference sometimes. So how important how important was it for you guys to be able to get that locked in?
It was definitely very important for us. It's a thermometer. You're using it to measure the temperature of your devices. Because of that, all our MeatSticks that are manufactured, we put it through a 2-point calibration process to ensure the accuracy of the probes of the sensors. That actually brought up a really good point. One of the things which I love about it, the MeatStick as well, is because of that ambient sensor, you could actually, as I like to say, take cooking to the next level. Right now, traditional cooking, we're basing our cooks off the oven temperature, as I like to say. But like you're saying, the oven, the grill, that temperature that it's measuring is really this average.
That's not correct. Yeah, it's not. You can set your oven to 350 and you can probably anywhere inside that oven is going to be totally, from 325 to 375 on all points in between. So
Exactly. And, once the general person understands that the oven isn't what it's actually saying, and it's just, kind of an average type thing, their improving could definitely improve a lot. I'll admit, we get a lot of complaints about this as well, saying, it's completely off. And we're like, well, we can't say, it's there's something wrong with our MeatStick, put it through calibration or put it through a water bath, put it in the sous vide, you'll see that it is accurate. But because of, 100 different factors, it is going to be a little bit, to your understanding, off, right? So
yeah. I mean, and I try to tell people that all the time, because really, like you said, and where it comes into the barbecue people is they'll have even if it's a wired thermometer on their on the grill, on the grate at the grill next to their meat, and then they have the one, the analog one that's sitting on top of the dome of their smoker, and it'll read two different temperatures, and it's like, yes, because it's actually cooler up towards the top where that other one is, and you're down right next to the food where all the heat is. It's going to be a totally different temperature, and that's what people don't understand, is that grills and ovens and smokers are always constantly changing, everywhere, especially on the pellet grills, because even if the pellet grill, you have a PID controller in the pellet grill, it's still a big air-filled chamber that the convection is just moving it everywhere. So,
and I mean, with the pellet grills, I'm not exactly sure how their thermometers work exactly, but I mean, I have one myself. It's a long thermometer that's on one of the corners of the the pellet grill itself. So that's where it's measuring. Maybe there's multiple touch points on that, so it is a little bit different.
Now they use an algorithm like everybody else, where they have a mathematical calculation in there where whatever that actually is reading there, they have an equation that will kind of put an average, just like in an oven, the average of what it's going to be inside the pellet grill. So and even with the PID controllers, people think that makes it where it's dead on accurate. It just gets a little closer, It's just an mathematical algorithm that they use to try to get it a little bit closer. So what were the challenges of when you first developed this to get it out there and start selling it?
So really the biggest challenge was just sourcing the correct parts, I guess you could say. Finding suppliers for all these high heat resistance electronic components, batteries, was the really greatest challenge. We did find a lot, but a lot of them, after doing a bunch of testings, they're not the most reliable components, especially on high heat, even if rated for that. So for some of the ones we were testing, especially for the prototypes, it would work the first few times, and after maybe 100 cooks, 200 cooks, we see the components starting to fail. So it's really sourcing the right components on that part. The second issue is what people fail to think about is actually the board. Making the MeatStick smaller and smaller is actually extremely difficult. We've talked to the PCB manufacturers in Taiwan that make some of the smallest items in the world, and they're one of the best PCB manufacturers. They've never tried to make majority have never tried to make boards so small and thin for use anywhere. Right. So it's
usually
just
probably medical devices, and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So finding the right one at a reasonable price. I mean, our big goal is to try to make it cheaper the better, to make it more affordable. Really, because we want to bring this. I want to get everyone to cook better, make them cook more easily, make them not, worry about cooking, meat in general, right? Fish, meat, anything. One of the biggest issues I found when talking to a bunch of people about cooking is, the reason they don't cook meat more often, especially big cuts of meat, is they're always overcooking it, undercooking it. It's always so much up in the air that they don't want to deal with it. So it's always been a special occasion type thing.
Yeah, every Thanksgiving or Christmas, you always got people, I got to try to cook a prime rib, and help me, what should I do? And I mean, because I'm big into the Facebook groups and the forums and everything like that. And I always try to help people as much as I can. But, that's the big thing is now I can tell them, before, 10 years ago, you really didn't have as many options as you do today as far as being able to, monitor the internal temperature, So I think that we're in a great time where just about anybody can make something, and the MeatStick really helps with that. I'm going to go ahead and pull up your website here, just so people can understand what we're talking about here. And there we go. You see it there?
Yes, I do.
All right. So so this is what we're talking about. So one of the things that I love about the MeatStick, and it's not just because everything is built into the thermometer itself, but you can use it with your phone, which you don't need a separate, device like the earlier wireless, let's say, quote wireless thermometers out there that the barbecue guys, used. They weren't really wireless because everything was wired into one, other device. And then you had another device that would use radio waves to communicate with it. And you still had to carry it around with you. But the MeatStick now, I mean, the monitors, everything is built into the stick itself. And then you read it with your phone app. So you don't really need a separate device to read it from your phone. So that's one of the things I love about it. So let's talk about when you first came out with the first product. Did it have just the MeatStick itself and not have the extender and Wi-Fi capability?
So when we were actually developing it originally, we realized range was an issue to begin with. So when we're developing it, we had the original MeatStick, which is just the charger and the probe, but we also were at the same time creating our Wi-Fi bridge set, the one that you do have as well. And what we were thinking at the time was, for barbecue, you definitely need that range. We knew that was a big issue, right? You wanted to be outside your house at the store, checking your temperatures. So we actually came out with both of them around the same time. Actually, we came out with them at the same time. So that's one thing we did have before Meter. They didn't release their block, I feel, until like a year later, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, it took them a while. It took them a while to get to the Wi-Fi function down, but and that was, like I said, I think one of the main complaints when they first started releasing their product was that the range, because it was just the one stick and the Bluetooth was very, and if you stuck it into a smoker that had, a thick, sides to it, you really, you could only get half of what it actually said. If it said 30 feet, you could probably only get 10 or 15,
exactly,
because of the thickness of the wall of the smoker or what have you. So that was people's main complaints, is you really had to be standing next to the smoker to use it anyway. So why not just use an instant read? It's just
exactly. Yeah.
Now, one of the things I can tell you, one of the things I do love about these type of thermometers is I can use it on my rotisserie, and because there's no wires to it. Because even like I said before, the wireless ones still had wires connected to something. They weren't truly wireless. At least this one I could stick in a chicken and put on my rotisserie and monitor it, which I couldn't do with any other way. But now with the Wi-Fi bridge and the extender, at least I've had no problem with the Wi-Fi bridge whatsoever. I could be at the store and watch the temperature of the cook, which not that I do that all the time, but just being able to do that just amazes me how technology is been affected, the outdoor and even the indoor cooking in the last 8 years or so has just blown me away. So what did it take to develop the Wi-Fi bridge and the extender? I mean, when you started making this, did you already have that in mind, or was that something you said, well, we got to kind of work on this really quick?
So for the MeatStick and the Wi-Fi bridge, that was, we knew we needed the Wi-Fi bridge when we're starting it out because of the range issue. People wanted that extra range, when they're barbecuing. The idea was to be around your house the entire time. The extender was something we decided to put together after around 2 months of feedback from our customers of the original MeatStick. And pretty much like you were saying, the big issue was people were expecting better range out of the MeatStick. For 30 feet, when you're cooking on a pan, open grill, it's not a big issue, right? But once you close the door on your smoker, that range is just completely reduced. And majority of people, the Wi-Fi bridge that we have, it's not a cheap device, I'll say. It's pretty much like a built-in router almost, to make it communicate with your router, with your phone, and it's not cheap. So we're looking at, from what we're seeing, the feedback we're getting is people just wanted to be in the house. At the end of the day, that's what they wanted. So we're thinking, how can we create a device to extend the range of the MeatStick itself without costing too much? And that's how we developed the extender. which we released around 6 months later. And this is a product we rushed out to market, the extender unit, because we knew people wanted it and people needed it. And it was at a great price point between the Wi-Fi bridge set and just having the limited range, I guess you could say, the MeatStick.
Yeah, you're talking about $100 difference, but then again, you still get the extra probe with the Wi-Fi bridge set. But then again, you fit that. Now you got everybody covered. For somebody who's on a really budget that doesn't care, you stand right next to it. Maybe just uses it for their rotisserie, and their smoker's open already, and they don't care, and they only need the 30.
Exactly.
But for an extra $20, why not get the extender? So I mean,
Exactly.
I think that's a really bargain. To me, it probably seems like you're giving that thing away, because it probably cost you close to the $20 that more that you're selling it for to make that thing. But like I said, I particularly love the versatility of it because I can use it anywhere. I can, like I said, I can go to the store. I forgot something. I got to go get something at the store. And if I got something on the grill or smoker and I want to make sure, or even if it's in the oven, I mean, that's the good thing about these probes is it just doesn't have to be used outside. I mean,
exactly.
If you're cooking in your oven, you can put them in there as well, or so, and then the sous vide bath and all that. So, I mean, just the overall versatility of it now, it just makes a lot of sense. And really, they're not that much more than the barbecue thermometers we're selling for anyway. People all the time were paying $70, $80, $100 for a decent wired barbecue thermometer or something like that. So, I mean, as far as paying a little bit extra to have the versatility and being able to use it, truly wireless, use it on a rotisserie and not having to worry about it, the wires getting all messed up and all that. So
exactly.
Now I know that when you first came out with it, it was a USB charged battery, and you kind of changed that with the newer models. What made you change that, and what's the difference in that?
So originally, the reason we decided to go for USB was, in general, the surveys we did on potential customers at the time, they were saying, "Oh, I want the USB, right? I want to be able to just charge it. I don't want to use just AA batteries, AAA batteries, and it was just it made things a lot easier to use for them, at least, and just from the people we talked to at the time." After releasing the product, one of the biggest complaints we were getting was like, this isn't like, I'm spending so much money and I need to go plug it into, the wall just to use it, plug it into my computer just to use it. And realized, and even for my personal use, I was realizing at the time, I was like, oh, I guess, it is a little bit of a hassle. And so when we're going back to figure out how we wanted to change the charger, we're looking at two different methods of doing it. One, making it as we did now with, two AAA batteries, right? To make it portable, use it wherever. You could use, rechargeable AAA batteries if you wanted to. Not a big issue from what I've been seeing. Or we could also go with built-in, lithium-ion rechargeable batteries, and then the USB, right? So we were actually playing with that idea, looking at the potential use cases for it and how people use the product. The problem with having a built-in battery is one, it makes things a lot more complicated, it makes things a lot more expensive. Our product's already expensive. We didn't want to make it more expensive for everybody because it would have definitely made it a lot more expensive. The second is actual use case. At the end of the day, for, I guess, power users, it's fine, right? Who was using it. They would charge it, once a month. Someone like you might charge it once a month and it would be fine. For the normal person that might be using the probe once a month per se, by the time they get back to it and they want to use it again, it might have drained batteries. They'll still need to plug it in to use it. It defeats the whole purpose of having that battery in there to begin with.
Right.
Right. So if that's the case, why spend, twice as much for a product that has the same functionality? So we decided to just, steer away from that, keep it with, AA, AAA batteries. So if you did run out per se, you could just switch them out because you have some at home somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and to me, I know a USB battery is great when you first have it for the first couple of years, but eventually those won't take a charge anymore anyway. And
That
so
as well. Yeah.
you're going to have to go ahead and toss, because they're not easy to change, usually you got to throw it away. Cause I have some, that use that are USB, and I know that when those don't take a charge anymore, I'm just going to end up tossing them. So yeah, but definitely makes a lot more sense to be able to, I'd rather just get a couple more, AAA batteries and toss them in there and go on with it. Doesn't make any difference to me. So I want to go back to let's go to the functionality of it. One of the things that you have to do when you use the MeatStick is you have to put it in the charger and kind of wake it up. And that goes back to what you were saying is to save the battery life and the charging time. It's got to be able to auto turn on and turn off, it can't be constantly on, or it's going to be constantly draining the batteries.
Exactly.
And I think that's one of the things people don't really, when they get it, they don't read the manual,
Yeah.
Awesome guys, we don't like to read manuals, but that's one of the things. I mean, even when I got it the first time, I had to kind of make sure I double checked and looked and said, you have to wake it up before you put it in the meat because it won't work, So how, I mean, it's got to be pretty complicated to be able to put those functions into that. How did you develop that kind of function to be able to do that? Is it all in the circuit board or?
So it's partly in the circuit board and partly in the, I guess you say, the firmware of the probe itself, right? The signal it sends pretty much the charger sends a special signal over to the probe to wake it up, and then it's good to go. And then the algorithm in the probe itself realizes, if it's not cooking, it will then turn off the conserve battery.
What made you come out and say, all right, we need to start developing the mini version of this? Was it something?
I mean, it's something that's always been on our mind that we've always been working on. In the very beginning, one thing we knew is we did want to make it smaller. Technically, the smaller, the better. And it was really, and the big thing was it really expands the use case of the product. Our original MeatStick, we designed that for large cuts of meat for, American low and slow barbecue. That's what it was for. I personally still used it for steaks and things like that. But, when I'm using smaller cuts of meat, maybe like a small, squab chicken or, a tenderloin steak, filet mignon, it's a little bit big. And that was a complaint that we're getting from people. So, I mean, we're always working on improving our technology is one thing we believe in. So we were able to find a way to, bring the size of it smaller for this exact use case.
Now, doesn't have the same capability. I mean, it's got most of the same capabilities, but as far as range, it's a little bit less range. But as far as the battery time is, instead of I know that like I said, I did a 24-hour cook on mine. So I think what is the standard ones? What do you say that
the MeatStick is, again, like I was saying, it's for low and slow American barbecue. We were making sure we could get at least 24 hours out of that. Some people like to cook the brisket that long. So we're like, all right, let's do it. Let's figure out a way to make it last that long.
I think when I was done with my 24-hour cook, it actually had 2/3 left charge to it by what it was telling me anyway. So it didn't get anywhere close to being fully worn out. So, but on the mini, what is the maximum cooking time on the mini?
So we'd like to say for the mini, it's 8+ hours.
Okay. So, but like you said, you're using this mostly for, steaks or fish or something where you're not cooking it for a long period of time anyway.
Exactly.
You could do a roast or something with it if you're cooking it for, 4 or 5 hours, or ribs or something like that. But mostly this is geared towards stuff you're cooking within a couple hours anyway, if not less than that.
Yeah. I mean, another thing to note is our battery, the battery level that we say, 24+ hours for the MeatStick, 8+ hours for the mini. Those are based off consideration for use over time. What we wanted to say is for these, for this charge, you're using for a year, using it for 2 years, it will still get that 24+ hour battery usage, and not just be like, it's like for your iPhone, it starts, they like to say, oh, it'll last, 1, 2 full days. But after
Right.
a year, you're only getting, half a day, right? We want to make sure we're not just saying what the maximum is at the, when it's
Yeah.
brand new.
And then
Then, like a
2
year
months,
later,
yeah,
it
a
gets
year
like,
later, it's
yeah,
like, it's only doing, 12 hours. So
exactly.
you got the Mini and then the Mini X. So
Mhm.
what's the difference between the Mini and the Mini X?
So the main difference between the two, the probe itself is the same. They're both the same, I guess, mini probe. The difference is the charger. What we decided to do is we included the extender charging unit into the Mini X charger. So you don't need a separate device for increased range.
Gotcha. So it's
And
pretty,
what I
it's
love,
pretty much, it's like
yeah,
pretty much like having the regular meat stick without the extender, but
mhm,
the X has the extender kind of built into it, or
exactly.
the Mini X has the extender built into it. Gotcha.
Exactly. So, I mean, for me personally, there's a magnet on it too. I just have it on my fridge. Whenever I need to use it, I just, turn it on, put it into my meat. Depending where the oven is, I might, leave it on the fridge or, just move it over to, clip on the oven somewhere that, doesn't get too hot, of course. And then I'll be good for, the entire cook.
Now, one of the things that I like about it, and I ordered the Mini when I first saw the Kickstarter come out for it, because I can see that I want to use it for like the steaks and
Mhm,
shorter type cooks and
mhm,
smaller things that the regular meat stick is kind
mhm,
of too big for. But I
mhm,
like the fact that all of these will work with your Wi-Fi bridge. So if you already
mhm,
have a Wi-Fi, you already have the Wi-Fi bridge and a regular meat stick,
mhm.
these will work in conjunction with it. So you can have all these different probes and all working off the same Wi-Fi controller, correct?
That is correct. The extender actually works as well. So if you already have, like, for example, the extender set, with the extender, you don't need to buy the Mini X set. You can just buy the Mini set, use that same extender to extend the range of your Mini as well.
Gotcha. And
And yeah, and one cool thing that we don't really advertise, I mean, people ask, we'll let them know, is the extender also works with the Wi-Fi bridge. So what I mean by that is if you're cooking something in the kitchen and something on your grill at the same time, what I personally do is I have the Wi-Fi bridge in my kitchen, and then I have the extender outside by the grill. The grill would extend the range of the sticks on the grill to the Wi-Fi bridge inside. Um, and then they would connect them all to the cloud. So you have your, your temperatures from anywhere.
yeah, and that comes into play too, because I know a lot of people that if they just buy the Wi-Fi bridge, they complain that they have to plug the bridge in somewhere. It doesn't have batteries and all
Exactly.
that. But like you said, if you're using it with the extender, you just put it somewhere, put it in your office or whatever,
Mhm,
and then the extender is going to be able to, extend the uh, signal out to the Wi-Fi and
mhm.
keep going from there. So it definitely is a great system where it all works together, and that's one of the things I love. I love it when everything works together. That well, companies do that. They'll,
Mhm,
I want to make sure they have to buy something else.
mhm,
I don't want to, I want to make sure that, I'll sell them something here, but they got to buy something else to work it with here,
mhm, mhm.
So
Yeah.
I really like it when everything works together and as
Mhm,
it should be. So,
mhm.
you do sell additional sticks. So you got
Yes.
additional sticks they can buy. And are you going
Mhm.
to do that? Well, also with the, I guess, uh, with the mini as well. Do they
That is
have to
correct. Yes.
buy the charger, or they can just buy the sticks when they?
If they have the meat stick, they still need to get a mini charger. The mini charger can't charge a meat stick, and the meat stick charger can't charge a mini.
Right, right.
Yeah,
But if they buy a mini, they don't have to buy the mini with the charger if they wanted to get an extra mini stick.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So they can buy an extra Wi-Fi bridge extender. You could just, if you just bought the Wi-Fi bridge and you want to get
Hmm.
the extender, you can just buy the
Hmm.
extender. So
Yeah.
that's the good. You can buy the different things
Hmm.
separately. So
Exactly. Yeah.
so this is your main project you got going on now. You're still waiting to get that
Hmm.
released. I know I got one coming to test out, so I can make
Hmm.
sure that I'll be one of the guys, the guinea pigs, to making sure it's working great. But what's on the horizon? What do you guys plan on? Because everybody always wants to keep making something new and different. What's on the horizon for you guys?
Well, I mean, right now our main focus is really getting our meat stick and our minis up to production speed. We have a lot of demand. People want it. So instead of focusing our energies on new devices, which we do have in the works as well, but they are on the early phases as well. One thing I can say is our Wi-Fi bridge. It is a very basic, I guess you could say, bridge unit right now. So we do want to bring more functionalities to it. But as our focus is getting our production up to speed for the people that want our current products, that is our, I guess, where our current energy is focused right now.
Now, do you see any other design changes to the meat stick itself since you just went through a major with the 2020 model?
Yes, so we actually just went through a major change, and actually the version you have, we've actually updated that one as well with some minor changes. You will be receiving one, I guess, with the Mini X that's coming in a few days, I think. And the main changes that we did for that was it functions exactly the same as the one you currently have. It's more of we when we're developing the mini and to be able to make it so small, the same process that we're using for the 2020 meat stick wasn't feasible for the mini because it was just too small. So when we're looking into that technology and developing it, we realized, oh, there's a better way to get that waterproofing to make it dishwasher safe. That's even more reliable than the current version that the 2020 version we have. So we switched out the ceramic piece for this new version.
Well, that's good. See that, and that's another thing I like when companies continue to innovate, even if it's the same product. Where, you know, I hate it when, you know, and I use Big Green Egg as an example because they've had the same product for, you know, 40 years or so, and they really there's different accessories and everything else that you can buy for it, but the product itself really hasn't changed much, you know. But there's other companies like Kamado Joe that actually totally redesign their Kamados, and then they got different versions of them that, you know, if you want the basic version, you can get that. If you want the one that's a little bit bigger, that has the slow roller built, I mean, just, you know, I love companies that are continuing to innovate, even if, you know, the product they have is great, that they're going to continue to innovate that product and come out with new stuff. But, I'm really impressed with it so far. I love it. I'm glad I waited to get into a wireless thermometer. Waited for the meat stick. You know, reached out to you guys. Like I said, I really like to. I like to research the products and stuff that especially if I'm going to suggest them to people that follow me. I like to make sure that they work really good and they do what they claim to do and all that before I start trying to promote them or even use them myself. And nobody, you know, I've had people send me stuff. You know, if you start a YouTube channel, people will start sending you stuff all the time. And I've thrown so much stuff in the garbage. It's just like, and I tell people, you know, I won't review it if you don't want me to. If you want me to review it, I'm going to be honest about it. So I can either review it and throw it in the garbage, you know, or just throw it in the garbage if I don't like it. So, but I really like the meat stick. I think everybody, you know, if you smoke or grill or even just regular cooking, if you want to know, if you want to be a better cook, you can definitely use the meat stick to do that. So. Yeah. Well, thanks for being on. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about anything else coming out right now, or just,
not in particular. I mean, we're working on the mini, getting that out. One thing, we will be working on in the next month, actually, we've been working on is, a whole app UI, design, update refresh, I guess you could say. So that's current work. I don't have an expected date for that, but definitely, just changing it up, getting a lot of feedback from our customers about what can be improved. So we're always listening, and we want to make, you know, the best product possible for you guys.
Well, I appreciate you being on. I really look forward to the mini, and look forward to continuing using the meat stick and all the innovation that you guys are coming out with. And I'm sure you guys will do great with the app. The app so far, I mean, I've had, you know, no problems with the app whatsoever. It worked right out of the box. There's no I had no issues. And believe me, I've used plenty of different app functions. When the Kamado Joe temperature controller they first came out with, I think the first year and a half, they had nothing but issues with it. So when you get into technology and trying to make these electronics, like you said, these tiny electronics, do things that have never been done before, you got to go through jump through a lot of hoops and a lot of things they don't turn out the way you want to. But I've been really impressed so far. The MeatStick has done everything it's told me it was going to do. And like I said, I really looked at it because I wanted to be able to use it in sous vide. And deep frying doesn't really. I'll probably use the mini some for deep frying, but hopefully it doesn't have any issues with that. But just being able to use it in the sous vide bath and then throw it in the smoker for that type of functionality, because believe it or not, I want to know, even if it's in the sous vide bath, if it's at the right temperature, because those are it's really important to be able to monitor your meat even in a sous vide bath even if it's a longer cook. So.
Yeah, I mean, I love the functionalities that we're bringing to sous vide as well. Since you use it, you realize you have no idea what the internal temperature is of that steak you're cooking when they tell you to do 1 hour. And, over time for sous vide, I mean, I love sous vide too. And you could realize, you could actually learn saying, oh, when it's at this temperature for 10 hours, it will do, this to the meat.
Yeah, so you use an algorithm yourself, but to be able to sit there and look at it. Now, there are companies that are making sous vides with thermometers, but they're usually commercial versions that are, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. So they're for more commercial use, where they have a thermometer that you can put into the meat, into the bag that has a little piece of rubber that goes onto it, but they're still wired to the sous vide.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
But, I got a buddy of mine that's big into sous vide, and I'm like, dude, I got this thing. It's less than $200 and I can use it everywhere. And it works in the sous vide bag. And he's like, I'm getting one. So, definitely thanks for being on. I appreciate it. And I'll have you on again, I'm sure, to talk about any new technology you guys got coming out. But I really look forward to the mini, and I'll make sure I put a link to your website below. People can find out all the information on the MeatStick. Definitely, they're also available on Amazon and pretty much anywhere you buy barbecue stuff. So.
All right. Thank you, Darren. It was great. Thank you for having me.
Thanks again. And I'll see you guys on the next Fire and Water Cooking Podcast.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again for following the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I want to make sure I thank Mendel from the MeatStick for being on. Make sure you check them out on Amazon and on their website in the link below. Make sure you follow the Fire and Water Cooking Facebook page, group, YouTube channel, and follow the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I'll see you on the next episode.